Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. And today, we welcome somebody whom I find hard to describe. Her name is Vicki Robin, and you will perhaps well remember her for an international longtime bestseller called Your Money or Your Life. And other people will know her for political things that she has been involved with over the years, creating a better world, a world that might have a future. And so then I read this book, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure what she is, but we're certainly very happy to have her. She's multi-talented. She's written a new book. It's called Blessing the Hands That Feed Us. Subtitle, What Eating Closer to Home Can Teach Us About Food, Community, and Our Place on Earth. And she's the author of Your Money or Your Life. The preface to this book, written by Frances Moore Lapay and Anna Lapay, published by Viking. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry to take so long to get there, but I'm staggered by the book. It is so rich. It does get into philosophical issues. I call philosophical, you might call cosmological issues. It melds memoirs, memoir notes, I suppose, into discussion of important things. It also provides practical steps for a new approach to living. And because we're in San Francisco, we should say, it also includes recipes. I mean, what more can you get in one book? I don't know. And this is from a person who is a renowned innovator, it says here, a writer and a speaker. In addition to co-authoring the best-selling Your Money or Your Life, Robin has been at the forefront of the sustainable living movement, and she's received a lot of awards. And then she comes by Conversations on the Coast, so we feel kind of privileged by all of that.
How sweet. I do, too.
We really thank you very, very much. The idea or the story that you're telling in this book is centered on almost a dare that you accepted. Now, first we have to say where you are when you accept it. You're on an island in Puget Sound called
Whidbey Island.
And then there's a town
called Langley, a little town of 1,000 people that I live in.
And a woman by the name of Tricia.
Right.
Tricia comes by and challenges you to see if you could, I guess survive is the word, or nourish yourself by eating food that is produced only on that island.
Oh, it's even worse than that.
Oh, God.
Yeah, Tricia is a market gardener, and she wanted to see if she could feed somebody for 30 days just out of her garden, where she sells vegetables in the farmer's market. And so we agreed, since it was going to be done in September 2010, and that she had nothing that sticks to the ribs. She has no grain, no beans, no meat, no cheese, no nothing. We agreed that I could go out hunting for food within a 10-mile radius because she was
hunting. Yes, on your
it was a hunt
on your somewhat electrically powered bicycle.
Exactly, my human and electric powered bicycle. And so I took up this dare for several reasons. One is that you say I've got an eclectic past, but if you take a look at the underlying process, I am always looking about how we, the people, can live within the means of the earth and have a happy life. You know,
and a happy earth.
And a happy earth,
yeah,
exactly.
Very important.
So that's the whole question of sustainability and our way of life here on the planet that's being exported rapidly from the United States around the world is an unsustainable way of life. So I turned this sustainability attention to food. Is it possible for us to live within the means of our regions rather than this massive global industrial food system that's a miracle of logistics, but it's not a miracle of nourishment, and it's actually becoming, suspect in obesity, suspect in toxicity and cancers. People are worrying about it. So that was in the back of my mind when Tricia made this dare. And she found lots of people who said no, and I said yes. Because also...
Well, you've done this daring stuff before.
I have.
I mean, really? Rhinelander, Wisconsin? In the winter?
Yes, the coldest place in the country, Rhinelander, Wisconsin. I've lived in the hottest place in the country, in Florence, Arizona. And what it is that you could call me dumb, but I like to test my...
Daring, you're daring.
I'm daring.
You're courageous.
I'm foolhardy. I'm courageous.
You have the soul of a pioneer.
I do. And I like to stretch myself and test myself in environments that are beyond, people live these, they like to live in their comfort zone.
Yes, yes.
And if you're committed to your comfort zone, then more and more stuff that's outside your comfort zone might be scary. So I want an expansive life. I don't want a diminished life. So that was behind my commitment to a 10-mile diet, 10-mile eating radius. And I was able to go out in that eating radius and find meat, milk, which was illegal to sell,
yes,
cheese.
We find that out.
Yeah. So I was able to find food and then eat locally for September 2010.
You write here early in the book, the 10-mile diet changed me. I blogged every day, diving into food issues, awakening sleeping beauty skills of cooking and gardening, and re-engaging with an old passion for social change, sidelined while I recovered from cancer. Best of all, I finally landed somewhere on Earth, in a real place, with real soil and forest, a real community, where I belong, the way my skin belongs to me. I am part of life, not a remove in self-sufficiency, but connected in reciprocity, mutuality, and care. Now that's the bright philosophical picture, and when we come back, we're going to follow the actual trail, step by step. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Vicki Robin is our guest today. Her new book is called Blessing the Hands That Feed Us. What eating closer to home can teach us about food, community, and our place on Earth. And a gentleman the name of Bill McKibben, who wrote a book called Oil and Honey, says this about Ms. Robin's book. Vicki Robin has helped millions of Americans reshape their lives in sound and beautiful ways. But this may be her most important project yet, and a crucial one for our tired planet, too. I agree with him in the sense that you're talking about where every one of us lives, eating, food, and something we can't avoid. If you talk about other aspects of the globe and its issues, well, I don't drive a lot. I use a bike. Leave me alone. But food is food, and it is everyone's thing. Got to have it. It's
a primary form of consumption. Yeah, you're right. You can't stop eating as an expression of sustainability. And what we don't know is that 95% of the food that we eat comes out of a global industrial system who's the corporations. It's a consolidated distribution system. Even your natural and organic brands are pretty consolidated under distributors like PepsiCo. Not evil. It's just simply that we are very dependent on corporate system, the bottom line of which is not nourishing you, the bottom line of which is shareholder value. So my interest is in how much can we, the eaters, reclaim our capacity and our right to produce and eat food that's grown within the region. Whether you call the region 10 miles is a ridiculous region. That's sort of neighbor to neighbor trade. It's not a region, but
Well, you're talking about doing something in a 10-mile radius that has worldwide implications.
It does. And one of the things I realized when I did the 10-mile diet, eating Trisha's vegetables and beef and chicken and things that I found in my 10-mile area, was that I realized that if 100 people on Whidbey Island replicated my diet, we would have cleared out the food there. We don't have the capacity to produce enough food on Whidbey Island, even for 100 people for a month.
Yeah. You do this in several places in the book. That is to say that you're going along swimmingly, it seems to me, telling us what you're doing to eat locally, talking about things like relocalization and how wonderful that is for the planet. And then you go, but this ain't really getting us anywhere because the thing is so much bigger than us. In first talking about it in this segment, for example, you use the term worldwide. The industrialization of food is worldwide. And I think, gosh, even in Italy, where they're still stirring the pot, it's amazing.
It is amazing, and it's a miracle. Because 100 years ago, all food was local, pretty much. There were maybe spices and such like that. But it's a process of transportation and refrigeration has allowed us to bring in, grapes from Chile. And as a consumer, of course, we love this. You can go down to the store and get whatever you want. It's very convenient, but we don't understand the dependency of it and the fragility of it, really. See, I live on an island, and it's serviced by a ferry to the south and a bridge to the north in an earthquake zone. So it's a really good place to practice this thought of, what would happen if these systems were disrupted in any way, shape, or form? And also, how much do we really want to be dependent on a system where we can't get any good information about what's in our food? So I call this relational eating, being in relationship with your habits, your psychology, your demands and your sort of immature, tantrums about what you want to eat, with your yard, with your kitchen and cooking. It's like putting yourself back in the food system as an active participant. And the benefits are not necessarily just, it's fresher and I'm healthier and stuff like that. Although I will say that ever since this diet, I've maintained my weight because I'm not a food abuser anymore. Because if I know the farmer, I'm not going to chow down, on Trisha's beans, knowing how much she put into growing those beans. I respect food now, and I respect the farmers. I respect what it really takes to bring this food to me, and I honor it. I say grace,
When you thought about doing this, you also had in your mind some goals. What would happen when you did the 10-mile diet? You would develop, you thought, a new relationship with food. That's certainly true. And you would fall in love with the hands and the lands that fed you.
I actually didn't know that was going to be a byproduct. I really just wanted to test. Local food is the new buzzword, local is the new organic. Yeah. So I just wanted to test this out. And I realized that most of us, we go to the farmer's market to socialize. Maybe we buy 3 beets. This is not a food system. This is the beginnings of a reclaiming of our capacity to grow food regionally. But at the moment, what we have is not at the scale that can actually feed the people. So local food doesn't hold water, and I wanted to know if it could hold water.
And you found out that it could,
up
to a certain extent.
But we really, the next frontier is not quite as sexy as the farmer's market. The next frontier is developing the infrastructure, the logistics, the canning and packaging and processing, the jams and jellies and sauces, the grain, the mills for grain. It's developing that sort of intermediate, small scale technology that allows people to transform the grain from their garden, from their farm, to flour to go into bread.
Hush, you're starting to sound like Mrs. Safeway. Many things in this book we mentioned in the first segment, but there's also a mystical moment which we're going to learn about next.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Today we're talking about a wonderful book called The Blessing the Hands That Feed Us, What Eating Closer to Home Can Teach Us About Food, Community, and Our Place on Earth. We're chatting with the author, Vicki Robin. And at the end of the last segment, I made an untoward claim. I claimed that all the wonderful things I said were in the book in the first segment was not a complete listing, because the book also contains a mystical moment. And I want you to give us the setting for that moment and then share it with us, if you would.
Yeah, the setting was my backyard. It was about 2 weeks into the experiment of, and I was feeling this shift, and I was standing in my backyard, and I had this feeling of, rather than seeing food out there, that I was surrounded by food. I felt like I was a living being in a living world, and it was almost like I had eyes in my shoulder blades. I felt like an animal that can sense food. Mm-hmm. I was being returned to that natural state of belonging in the natural world. So that's
the setting.
That's the setting.
Okay.
You want me to start reading?
Please.
Okay. The feeling was somewhere between creepy and ecstatic. If I live in food, I can relax. Not only do I belong to my farming community and gardeners and farmers market, not to speak of the markets that contained food I could eat again in a few short weeks, I belong here. Here. I belong to the fertility of the soil and the exquisitely adapted plants and wildlife. Perhaps the animals in this rich coastal environment felt this way and didn't even have to label it. The bear lumbered to the water's edge in the spring as walls of fish migrated upriver to spawn. They simply feasted there the way we do at an all-you-can-eat buffet. The hide and tlingit knew where the berries and the camas and the mushrooms and the clam beaches were, and walked around in this food, eating. The creepy part is that when you realize how deeply you depend on one another, be it a berry bush or a mate, you know your vulnerability to loss. You realize that control is ultimately an illusion. We can delay death, but we have not conquered it. We can build levees, but we cannot control the vehemence of storms. We can, as farmers know, plant and tend and water and watch, but we only work with nature, not command it, especially now, as we watch the skies and wonder if the storms sweeping in again and again are harbingers of climate change or just, as we hope, El Niño or La Niña. I've discovered over many years of trying to find love without making myself vulnerable that it doesn't work. To be touched deeply, we have to open. To open is to not know how to control control how things turn out. Food vulnerability is the last thing any of us wants. In fact, agriculture is our sustained human attempt to control our food supplies. Without predictability of quote-unquote food income, the energy of a family or culture is necessarily focused on survival. Once those needs are met, we liberate our hands and minds for invention, for the arts, for dreams, for so much of what we identify as human. So my sense of belonging to this living web of eaters and food was awful in both senses of the word. It inspired awe and it pulled back the Wizard of Oz curtain on my safe little life where food was guaranteed. Even when I lived in the woods on $100 a month, I never wanted for food. That $100 bought a lot of rice and beans, powdered milk, and peanut butter. Do you want me to continue the next paragraph?
No, you can end it. Just hold it there. Let them read some more themselves,
Exactly.
For goodness sakes alive. We have to get to zucchini.
Oh, okay.
Now, zucchini on your island, as well as many other places around the world, grows like crazy. And on your island, for example, people give it away. They come around at night and dump it on your doorstep, so they have less zucchini than they had when the sun went down, which is really wonderful. Now, that's one issue. The other issue is that this diet, this 10-mile diet, left you out of the range of crunchies, by which you mean nuts.
nuts, grains, bread, crackers, cookies. There was no grain in my 10 miles. So,
and you, genius that you are, solved it with a zucchini.
Right. I'm a crunchaholic. That was the worst thing about it is like, I just need to have, my toast in the morning is sort of like a ritual of necessity. So somebody told me that I could dehydrate slices of zucchini and that if I caught them just at the right moment before they burned, they would have some crispiness. So I was going crazy, slicing zucchini and putting it in my dehydrator. And in fact, it did have a little crunch. And I ended up calling it Zackers. It was a little bit like Tom Sawyer trying to convince people that it was fun to whitewash a fence. But anyway, it was Zackers. And then I had some local honey. And if I put the local honey on my Zacker, I had a Zookie.
Excuse me. You put honey on your Zacker, you have Zookie.
Exactly.
It sounds like we could do a song to that.
We could totally do a song to it. So, I'm talented in making some things that seem like very tight constraints seem very exciting. It's a little bit like Lent. You do a Lenten practice in a way because you're delivering yourself back to God or the divine.
Yeah.
To be a little bit retooled in your demands and your obsessions and your attachments. And so this 10-mile diet really changed me in that way. It really took me off of my automatic food addictions and put me onto something that was real.
Now, toward the end of the book, I believe, and I was reading quickly at that time, that this ain't your last 10-mile diet. That you've got another one coming up? Or maybe...
Well, what happened was on the 10-mile diet, people said, oh, that's easy, September, Whidbey Island. And I said to them, I thought, okay, you do it and tell me if it's easy. But they said, try it in the winter. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. Sort of like you challenged me, I'm going to rise to it. So I did 50% of my food within 50 miles in February. And I chose February because it was alliterative, but also it's 3 days less.
Are we talking next month?
No, I've already done that. Now it's just local.
Oh, you've done it.
Eating local food for me is now my preferred norm. It's like I love eating Georgina's grain and Georgie's beans and Pam's salad. I love eating food grown by my neighbors. It feels nutritious, delicious, and it also is my way to participate in the prosperity of the place I live.
And your key out there to eating better and becoming more hopeful about the future of your world is simple. Just read Blessing the Hands That Feed Us by Vicki Robin. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.